did receive a series of letters. All the commissioners were given copies of that, so they were able to review those before the meeting. A lot of information provided. Questions, comments, discussion from the commission?
I had a question. I think it was brought up specifically, language regarding grandfathering. Is there going to be something
Sure.
regards that?
A couple points of clarification. First, all these regulations apply to the issuance of a permit, so they apply at the time of permitting. Anything that's out there existing today would be considered grandfathered or legally non-conforming if it didn't happen to comply with the new ordinance that you adopted. Since we've had most of these rules in effect for a few years now, I would suspect most of what's out there is probably not in conflict with what is being proposed tonight. But if it was older than that, it could be. And just to point out with regards to the solar panels on the city facility next door, those face this way. I don't believe they directly face the street, so I wouldn't consider them to be out of compliance with the ordinance as it's proposed. I also didn't want to, I think somebody mentioned it, so I wanted to bring up and clarify a variance process. If, because this is in the land development code, any provision of the land development code is something that somebody could submit an application and request a variance from the Board of Adjustment. So yes, there is a process. If you felt like you met the criteria that the Board of Adjustment has to use in order to grant a variance and wanted to go through that process, you could. I'm not sure I agree entirely with the position that was expressed from Farmers Branch about maybe how they operate their board versus ours, but there are specific criteria related to special conditions and hardships that under which the Board of Adjustment could grant a variance to some of these provisions should they find it meets those criteria. So.
Any else? Comments, questions?
I'd like to speak. The gentleman that spoke second stole my once all the homes had cedar shingles and now they're all asphalt. But I'd made some notes prior to getting here, and I've made some more along the way. But you know, I gotta take a little bit of exception when we're talking about the quality of life of the neighbor who's facing the solar panels from across the street. I mean, I may not like my neighbor's brick across the street, but it doesn't allow him to not have brick on his home. We used to not have cell towers anywhere. Now we do. Nobody, I bet, in this room could tell you where one is. Water towers, a little bit easier to pick out, but we've even started, we got one wind turbine here in Allen. And, you know, I got to lean towards saying I think that prohibiting certain people because of the direction their home is facing from having solar panels is just going to open up an administrative nightmare for us, because just like we were talking about, there's always going to be room for interpretation. I mean, well, this is kind of facing the street, but it's angled in a corner. Or what about the cul-de-sac lots where the house is kind of this direction versus that direction? I think that you know, the biggest potential is down the road if solar power does start taking off like it has the potential to. The people that have the homes facing the south, southern facing streets facing south or whatever, that are not allowed to have it, it'll make their property values go down. So it is kind of hurting them. I've been in home building here in the Metroplex for the last 23 years, and I can remember when we built homes without low E windows. Now they're all required. Freon was the standard. Now you can't, you know, if you've got to change out your system, it's got to be done to a higher SEER system that doesn't use Freon. We now have energy code requirements on every new home that's being built. I kind of lean towards the whole philosophy that, you know, Allen should be one of those cities that embraces the new and does try and take it to that next level, so that we are leading the way instead of following. But, you know, anyway, that's kind of my thought on this. I think solar panels have got a lot of merit. I have not installed any on any of the homes that I've built because they have been price prohibited. But I believe as you start seeing more people being able to do it, you will start getting those economies of benefit in the number of homes that are doing it. The prices will continue to go down, and more people will be doing them. But if you kind of take off, I think it's more of a quarter, because you got homes facing all four directions. But, you know, it does seem a little unfair to penalize the people who unfortunately have a home facing south. And, anyway, that's my opinion. I'm done.
Other comments, opinions, discussion?
If I may, each person that spoke talked about the fluidity of the technology. I'd venture to say that there, somewhere in elementary school, a STEM student is figuring out how to make solar panels look like shingles, and so somebody's gonna figure out, you know, hey, this is how you make it look like slate or terracotta roof or something. So as the technology changes, I think the fluid ordinance will take shape with it. Every house, if I'm not mistaken, has 4 directions. We're not stopping anybody from putting them on a roof. We're just saying you have these other options, just as we would say you cannot put a light on a wall pack because it has foot candles that go over whatever it is at the property line. So we're not being overly restrictive, I think, or prohibitive. We're just saying, yes, you can, as long as it fits what we're trying to do here. So technology, you know, we're not being overly prohibitive. So those are my thoughts.
I would agree with Ben. And I think if we ever get to that point in the future, we could always come back and amend this.
So what if we, in a true political fashion, did the best of both worlds and made an amendment to instead of the street facing, where the gentleman used the statistics specifically about southward facing homes in the northern hemisphere, that was where you get the most bang for your buck, basically, to make an exception or something on south facing roofs that face a street, that's an exception. I mean, I know that could open us up to a lot of things, but that's kind of the best of both worlds. I don't know. Maybe it's not.
Wouldn't that go back to the variance?
Well, a couple of things. First, if you were to start doing that, it would, again, the intent of the approach here is to mitigate visual impact. So if you can imagine a street here, right now they're kind of here and there, but imagine a street in which, you know, every house on the street had solar panels. It would be beautiful to some of the people in this room, but it would have a significant visual impact on the neighborhood. Some would like it, some would not like it, but the reality is it would be a significant visual impact. It would be different from what our neighborhoods look like today. So that, you know, that is, I think, the basis for the concern. If you were to start going, well, south-facing can have it, well, then you have a whole street that faces south. That's what you're going to end up with. If you go there, there's really no reason to have the restriction on front-facing at all, from my perspective. So that's where I think the intent is coming from.
And again, you can still have them on an accessory building. I think that doesn't eclipse having it on the south side, but it adds another flat surface or cantilever surface that you can add to it. So, you know, I think that's kind of a modulation in there. So.
Mr. Moore?
As a LEED certified architect, of course, I'm interested in any kind of sustainable ventures. I understand both sides of this, the aesthetic side and the functional side. Of course, there are a lot of other options people can use to save energy. Plant a deciduous tree on the south and the west side, LED bulbs, hybrid vehicles, and so forth. I think the difficult part of this decision is saying that just based on the direction of your house, you're allowed to take advantage of this or not. So I think that's basically what we're wrestling with right now.
One of the things that's brought up is a concern that we are segmenting the houses in Allen of who can and who can't. But that segmentation already occurs in our city because of who is your delivery service provider. I live in a house, the house right behind my fence line is an Encore and can get tons of money. I live in a co-op, I can't get a penny. So that segmentation of who gets solar cells is already in our town because the co-ops are not moving at the same speed aggressiveness as Encore is. So, you know, that whole argument of, some houses are segmented, some others, that's already in our town. That's already been created.
But you can still get solar power.
You can still get solar
And it's
power.
not the city that's saying you got to choose between Encore or CoServe.
So it's the state who defined the boundaries and the lines.
Put the power lines in.
Well, it's the state defined the boundaries, and you can't cross over those boundaries as it sits today according to state law. I also look at that as the state law, when they changed the rules for homeowners association, they could have made it the state law that said all cities cannot legislate it, but they left it up to cities to legislate it. And so that is in our purview to legislate it. I hear southern facing. I annoyed my real estate agent when we bought our house in Allen because I flat told him, you better find me a house that has a southern facing view with a north facing front, or I won't buy the house. And any house that was otherwise, we just said no. Didn't even go look at it. Don't know if you have other people that do that, but that was one of my requirements because understanding where technology would be going. So, to me, it comes back to, as Mr. Orr said, this is aesthetics versus benefits. Where are we at in Allen from an aesthetic perspective? Do we want solar cells facing public streets, or do we want to allow the benefit of the solar cells available to a larger group of people? And that's one of the things that's really what this question comes down to. It's aesthetics versus benefits. When I look at this, somebody alluded to that we've been listed as a tree city. We've earned the tree city reputation for many years. We've earned that record. But I'm going to tell you, when you start putting solar cells in the front, all the trees in front of people's houses start getting reduced because it starts blocking it. So the very thing that you moved Allen for the tree city recognition, the trees start getting chopped. And if you don't believe that doesn't happen on your front yard, go see what the utilities do. I've had trees massively destroyed, and people will start cutting that back. The minute that tree starts growing up high enough to hit that solar cell and diminish its efficiency, the tree's going to be whacked, and all of a sudden we have houses with chopped up trees in the front. If you've seen a utility company take out a tree section, it's ugly. So what's going to happen when homeowners start doing that because it starts impacting their solar cells? So the aesthetics go much further than just, do I see a solar cell on a roof or not? It goes into future trees and the look of streets. And to me, that's what it comes down to. It's the benefits versus the aesthetics. What do we want in Allen? What do we want when you drive down that street and see residentials? Do you want to see the solar cells and the potential impact the trees, or do you want the benefits? And that's the question at the table right now. And Mr. Pat over here, I know is on the benefit side. We've heard some people say they're on the aesthetics. That's what made Allen what Allen is, and so that's.
And I'll tell you, the last time I was in Maui, you see rows and rows of homes with solar panels on them every side, every direction, and nobody even thinks twice about it. As a builder, I notice it, and I'm sitting there going, wow,
Yeah. But this is Allen, and this isn't Maui. That's people came to this town because it's Allen. And so, but that's a decision that, you're going to have to look at and weigh at is the aesthetics versus the benefits.
I've said my piece.
I know you said your piece.
I guess I would just pipe in. I would reiterate what Mr. Trahan said about at some point in time, the aesthetics is going to be less of a battle as it gets, and it's just, in my opinion, it's just not there today. The solar panels, the pictures that we showed, I'm quite sure that if I took that to my neighbors and said they're going to put some of these front-facing ones in our neighborhood, they would be upset. They might not be able to stop it. They certainly wouldn't say, gee, that's a great benefit for the neighborhood and that's going to improve things. So I'm at this stage with also having worked with a different kind of energy source for most of my life, I saw a lot of promise about renewable energies and things that take a whole lot longer to get financially to the point that and maybe they are today, and I respect immensely all the people that took the time and that are involved with this, but I'm on the aesthetic side at this point.
I am on the aesthetic side at this point. I believe the technology will keep improving. We've seen massive changes in the effectiveness of PVs over the last several years. it's just not there. And, you know, the focus right now has been to make the PVs efficient and effective, not aesthetically pleasing. And I know there was some talk about solar shells. I know TI was working on solar shingles. So there's a lot of things in the works, and I believe in solar cells. I believe it's a microgeneration is where the future needs to go. Working in utility industry for many years, that is the ultimate goal. There's a whole litany of reasons why it's important for it to be successful, but I think the technology is just not quite there yet. When the city wanted to change irrigation rules, I gave them the same thing. Great concepts, but it's not ready from a technology, and as soon as that technology hits that, then we should immediately move this and make it where it's easily accessible by every resident in the city. But at the same time, we want to keep Allen, beautiful. It's something we focus on. So that's my perspective.
I think the city does a good job. I know that sometimes when we see ALDC adjustments, Lee, Bo, everybody gets these inquiries from different companies or different residential developments that say, hey, this is what we'd like to do. And you guys are always out in front of it. We always know what's coming by pre-planning through the ALDC. We always change it before it comes out. So I feel like if there's a groundswell of technology that's changed and all of a sudden it's great, it's a huge benefit, I think we will have the forethought of knowing and do something about it before it becomes a bigger issue. So as has been the case for a very long time here. So
We are the leader, not the followers.
all right.
So we've heard a variety of opinions. At the end of the day, there has to be a motion, and we have to make a recommendation to the city council.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to recommend approval of the proposed amendments to the Allen Land Development Code.
We have a motion for approval for the ordinance as is. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor of approving the amendment as is signify by raising your right hand. It is 5. Those opposed? That's 2. That amendment will go to the city council with a recommendation of approval with a 5-2. It will occur on August 23rd. And so basically the entire public hearing and the ability for the same activities to occur again in front of the council will occur. Recommendations I will make just for the individuals here. I know it's very helpful to bring and say you ought to do the research. You hear some things you can go look at, but you have to understand the council will make decisions based off the information that they have at their fingertips at that point. There's not computers up here to go do research live. And so, bring the information and make your case before the council, because that's the ultimate decision point. So we make a recommendation to the council. So that concludes item number 6.